something. Look at all the people. Excellent. I have to sit, apparently. Welcome. Thanks for coming in. My name is Nate Shivers. I host a podcast called Coast to Coast Pinball. It's available for free all over the world if you'd like to listen to one guy talk about a lot of pinball stuff for hours and hours on end. 173 episodes at an average length of 45 minutes. You do the math. We've talked a lot. One of my favorite subjects over the last couple years has been the journey of spooky pinball in America's Most Haunted, and today we're very happy to be joined by Mr. Ben Heckendorn. Ben Heck, come on down here. Let's get Ben down here.
Is this the grand entrance they like?
This is the grand entrance.
That's why they do it.
We were told you have to have a grand entrance here, so that's the rules. Theatrical purposes. It's either a giant Ben Heck or a tiny pinball machine. You figure it out.
So I brought my pre-mail.
That's pretty awesome.
I mean, I can't break character, you know.
Don't break character.
Oh, we even have name tags.
We do indeed.
What do you intend to do about the Clean Water Initiative?
Yeah, only hard-hitting questions. We're gonna really go at Ben here with all the really tough stuff. Hi Ben, how are you, sir?
I'm all right, Nate.
So, for those of you who don't know Ben hosts a show called, strangely enough, The Ben Heck Show.
I wanted it to be called Circuit Breakers. That was my pitch.
I like The Ben Heck Show.
It's too preposterous.
Tell us about The Ben Heck Show before we get into pinball.
Okay, so the Ben Heck Show is a weekly internet show that is sponsored by Element 14, which is an electronics distributor. And every week we build cool new things like this. And the intention is to teach people about electronics and drive community engagement.
I tried to watch your show recently because you were building a small pinball machine, and I got lost very quickly. You're very smart. You know a lot of stuff about building and electronics, and it's not for the faint at heart or the dumb in mind, as some of us might be. So, very impressive, sir. How many episodes have you done?
I think we're around 190.
Excellent. So check that out. That's a video show on the internet. It's really cool. It'll make you a smarter person.
It's on the YouTube.
So it's on the YouTubes, on the interwebs. So.
Are we going to interview the pinball?
We are. Hopefully it has something interesting to say.
It'll be like beep.
All right, who's played America's Most Haunted in the rooms? Most of us played America's Most Haunted. Who's looked at an America's Most Haunted? Who doesn't know what I'm talking about?
Why are they here?
I know. It's because there's air conditioning in the room. You can stay too, it's fine. So Ben, how'd you get to pinball? Like, what brought you into pinball? Because I don't know that 5 years ago you probably thought you'd be at a big gaming and pinball show with your game over in the main tournament for a Papa-sanctioned event, did you?
Yeah, it's a wild and crazy route of life. Well, I was into video games my entire life, of course. Because I remember growing up with Pac-Man and Donkey Kong and all that jazz. And I would say around the 1990s, once I would go around and like mobility, like, ooh, I'm a teenager, I have a car, whatever, and I would notice the pinball machines. And I obviously knew what a pinball machine was, because I was old. But I really thought it was interesting, like in the early 90s, when they started to tell stories using the abstract notion of whacking a ball around. I distinctly remember I was probably about 16 years old, and I saw the Data East Batman game, and I just thought it was so cool. And of course, Batman was the best movie ever back then. I still think it's the best Batman.
The original one, the first one?
The Tim Burton one?
Yeah.
Totally.
Kind of dark.
No, the score is so awesome. The Danny Elfman score?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's got those cool gadgets.
Did you lost at Val Kilmer though?
If you go back and watch Batman Returns, it also is pretty poor.
Yeah.
It's an amazingly shoddily made movie. If you watch it now, it's on Netflix. Like Catwoman falls against a roof and the roof shakes.
I should know better than to bring tangents.
Yeah.
With this guy, it's like.
Anyway, so I think, it was at UW Platteville, and this is when I was in high school. And I was playing in the student lounge, and he put in one quarter, and he's like, "Who are you?" And he put in the second quarter, he's like, "I'm Batman." And I'm like, "Oh, that's so cool how they work the storytelling into the money." So I found it really interesting how they, told a story in an abstract way, even though I didn't know what the heck pinball machine was about, how the rules worked. And then much later, and also when I was like 15, I made one on the cardboard and tried to hook it up to my Atari 800 computer.
How'd that work out?
It didn't work at all.
Didn't work it out, no.
Yeah, because I tried to program it in BASIC.
Yeah.
Interpreted basic language tokenized as a 1.57 megahertz processor. You know what's interesting? Jerry Ellsworth also tried to make a pinball machine and hooked it up to her Commodore because she had a Commodore.
I thought that would be a good idea.
I don't know. She probably did a better job than I did, but it's kind of interesting that we both tried the same thing, and then later in life both got into pinball. Anyway, I know I'm coming to your question.
It's okay. It's all right.
So it was around 2010. No, it was 2005, and I built myself a Neo Geo arcade machine because I thought it'd be cool. And then I'm like, what am I going to do next? And I'm like, I have to think of something more difficult. And I'm like, I know, I'll build a pinball machine. And building pinball is hard, to use the pin side meme.
I think we've heard that before.
Yeah. So I was like, well, what's my theme going to be? And it's either going to be like Bruce Campbell or Bill Paxton. And I'm like, well,
clearly, I mean, if of all the themes in the world to build a pinball machine, why not Bruce Campbell or Bill Paxton?
Right. I like Bill Paxton better because it's more abstract. It's like, why would you do that? And I've had so many people, the two questions they ask are, why did you do it? And does he know about it? And my first answer is, well, I did it because it's so crazy. I wanted people to think I was insane. But I just needed a theme to hang up.
That wasn't hard, was it, Ben?
I can keep trying every day to make people think I'm more insane.
No, you're there.
Yeah, no, I'm not done yet.
Okay.
I still have to announce my Bible adventures.
Announce it. We've been talking about it for 2 years.
I know. I'm not kidding. I'm going to do it. I don't care what anyone says. I'm going to
Bible Adventures, good pinball theme.
Yes.
Part the Red Sea.
Why not?
Multi-ball,
Everything is
Noah's Ark.
numbered. It's perfect. I see it like Tales of the Arabian Nights. It's just, whether or not you care about it, it's stories everyone has heard, ancient stories,
I don't think you have to pay a license fee on the Bible. I don't think you have to pay a license fee. I think that one's open source.
I know, it's like 2,000 years out of copyright.
Yeah.
Mickey Mouse will probably say copyright for 2,000 years. Anyway, yes. Anyway, so I did the Bill Paxton game for some reason, and I was like, oh yeah, cool, I wrote my own code and required, and it's a complete mess.
Did that game have a wizard mode?
No.
Oh, man.
I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Fair enough.
Anyway.
Where is this game now?
Oh, actually, Lloyd up at SS Billiards has it. So now it has a home where people can play it instead of like in my second bedroom or wherever it was.
Good.
I only have 2 pinball machines, believe it or not.
Space Shuttle?
Space Shuttle and Attack from Mars.
Attack from Mars.
Oh, Attack from Mars is nice.
That's very nice. So you built
Until the remake
Paxton.
comes out, it'll be worth $8.
Did you build another pinball machine before you met Charlie Emery?
Yes, I made that horrible Lost game.
Oh, that's right, the Lost game.
Yes, so we were fans of the TV show Lost, even though we had seen the finale, and we're like, we should make our next fan game, we should make it based off the TV show Lost, which is a really bad idea because TV shows have so much content you have to cull from. There's so many different scenes and things.
See, you missed here, Ben. You should have made it like Lost season 4, episode 12. That should have been the whole pinball.
Yeah, definitely. It was interesting though. It was kind of serendipitous. About 2 years ago, someone from Bad Robot emailed asking if we still had it because I think they wanted it for their office, and I'm like, actually, we tore it to pieces. Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, I could have like, oh, here you go. I don't want this thing.
That could have been a trap. They might have been trying to sue you.
No. I would have known if it was a trap.
No pinball company.
It's a trap.
No pinball's ever gotten in trouble.
Oh.
For that issue.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Is this being recorded?
No.
You and I have had much worse conversations. Like
This is
after
true.
podcasts
This is
than that.
true.
So
So you built Lost.
I did what?
You built Lost.
Oh
Sorry.
yeah. Well, around that time, I started. Here's the thing. If you ever want to like get into something, if you make something, then people will talk to you. So it's like, hey, Steve Ritchie, I'm your biggest fan. Oh, okay, whatever. Right? Actually, a better person is like, what?
I was trying to not say that myself. And then
Well, I said it. Whatever. Anyway, but if you can make something cool, then the old guys start talking to you, and I started learning a lot from Dennis. Dennis was really nice. Dennis and Greg, and yes, even John Papaduke, and I learned a lot of things along the way, and Lost.
Hold on. Stop.
Lost
Hang
was
on.
like.
Whoa. What'd you learn from John Papaduke? Just curious.
No, okay. He was like, I guess I could do a John Papaduke impression. He was like, most people are right-handed, so they push the right flipper button, which makes the ball go to the upper left, and that's where to put the toy. And it's true. That's why the toy is always in the upper left on a game. And the pin side, it was like, are pinball machines biased against left-handed people? Of course they are, because the whole world is. Just facts. Anyway, also, what else did John teach me? He's like, if it shoots well in foam, it'll shoot really good in metal. Which I think I took too much to heart because America's Most Wanted is like really fast, like too fast.
You gotta shoot it really good in foam. And then like
it's like
yeah.
The other problem we had with that was that to make that stupid jump ramp, which was a mistake.
Stupid jump ramp should be coming up behind us at any moment. I don't know how fast it is.
That's
right there. I'm looking at it.
We had to put in the big beefy like 11269 coils.
Yes.
And that makes everything else a lot more dangerous. So if I ever make another game again, I will make it easier. Scout's Honor.
Bible Adventures.
But it's going to be easier to play, but the rules are going to be like 3 times deeper. Yeah. We only used up like half the memory on this microcontroller, so we could obviously make the game twice as difficult. Okay, so once I learned
people
a lot
started talking to you.
Yeah, and I learned a lot from them, and they helped me out, and John, and then actually Steve Ritchie had some advice on this game. It was 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. And he's like, make that target smaller and make that out of metal. Otherwise, I don't hate it.
That's a pretty good impression. I remember him saying that. So when did you meet Charlie? When did the Ben Heck Charlie Emery partnership really join up?
Do you want the fluffy story or the real story?
It's not we're not broadcasting. It's just us. It's
but everyone's recording us, so they know everything.
Nobody's recording you.
It's going to be used in a court of law. Okay. All right. So let's see. The real story. Wait. I don't want to be one of those dicks who like goes over and makes the other person wait. Don't you hate that?
Language, Ben. Language. There's
what?
No kids in here. Never mind.
Sporting goods.
Oh yes.
Is it 1 hour?
Yeah, we're 1 hour. We got an hour. We got lots of time.
All right. So it was at Midwest Gaming Classic 2011, and this kid comes up to me. And I remember it because he looked like, if you ever played that game Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, he looks like the brown-nosing guy who's your fan in the arena. He's like, oh, you're the greatest champion ever. Oh, you're the best, right? And he's got like the spiky. Anyway, this kid walks up and looks just like that guy, except for getting dark hair, not blonde hair. And I'm like, oh, this, of course, in my brain, I'm thinking, oh, this kid looks just like that kid in that video game. That's how my brain works. Anyway, he's like, oh my God, you're my neck. He was also drunk at the time. And what? No, I don't want to call you. Did you push that?
Maybe.
You tried to call the guy who's doing the alien art.
No, I did call the guy who's been.
Why would you call him?
Because I saw his name on the phone.
Oh. He's going to be like, what are you calling me about?
He'll be happy about it.
Yeah. Well, wait,
Sorry.
he's like 3 hours behind us. So he was probably like not even awake yet. Oh, wait, it's like 8:30. He's probably having dinner with his family. You're a monster. Anyway. So, Andrew's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. He's like, hey, want to see this project we're working on? And I'm like, okay. And then we walk over, and then there's like this stressed out bald guy. I guess it was Chuck.
That was Charlie.
Well, he had more hair back then before he started his own company.
I believe that.
And they had made their Godzilla game.
Oh, yeah.
Their homebrew Godzilla. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then Chuck didn't know who I was, and whatever. He's like, who's this asshole person? And Andrew's like, oh, this is Benny to such and such. Anyway, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. How did you make this game? And Chuck at the time was still a graphic artist, and I used to be a graphic artist, so we kind of had a kindred spirit there. Anyway, I'm like, oh, these guys have a really cool printing process. I should become their BFF. And so a couple months later, they came over to my shop, and I helped them put some circuitry into the Godzilla game in order for it to have speech. Because I think they used a firepower tube. They just gutted it out.
Yep.
And so we actually hooked up a circuit that would sniff the switch matrix and assign speech calls to certain things. And then I guess now we're BFF.
So who said first, why don't we build a pinball machine?
Well, that was Chuck's big idea. I mean, his big joke is to say, Mr. Heck, I'm so glad you made me quit my job at my company. And I'm like, Chuck, I never said that. I said you were crazy to do that, if you recall correctly. So Chuck's big thing was like, he's like, yes, I want to start my own pinball company. And I was like, you're crazy. And then the second thing I said is like, well, I've been developing this Ghost game just on my own for like a year. Why don't you make it? Because it's
almost done, right?
Yeah, and if you look at the zombies thing that he's working on, I mean, that's still in progress.
Yep. So how far along were you with originally Ghost Squad was the original name of America's
Oh,
Most Haunted.
fun fact, it was John Papaduke who convinced me to change the name.
Interesting.
Because he's like, there's a Sega light gun game called Ghost Squad. You don't want to get sued.
You don't want to get sued?
And I'm like, well, that's sort of a point. So we had a thing on Pinside, and I was like, Pinside, come up with a new name so I don't have to. And someone came up with America's Most Haunted, which is like a play on America's Most Wanted. And I like it because the theme of the game is you're a reality ghost hunting TV show. So anything that tells the player that, and most, like 50% of all reality shows have the word America in it. So I'm like, oh, America's Most, okay, that sounds like a reality show. It could be America's Most Hot Rod Cars, you know?
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to really nail home the fact there's a reality.
So let me ask you this, because I remember at the time, and I remember specifically MGC, probably 2014, when you brought really the first time I saw a very fleshed out, fully working America's Most Haunted.
Yeah, the original prototype.
What was it like working with Charlie, where he wanted to start this pinball company, and he was working on a game, designing a game, and then you're going to build your game? Was there any ego there? Did it work out smoothly? Was he cool doing it?
Oh yeah, you know that's a good point. Well, the America's Most Wanted was further along. So to go back to your earlier question, I started it in January of 2012.
Okay.
And then Chuck started Spooky about 1 year later. So I was past a whitewood at that point. Even when you get to a whitewood, you still got like another.
What was your plan at the time before you met Charlie?
I
Were
was
you just
just
going to build
doing
a game?
I made that Lost game that sucked, and I wanted to do something that was decent.
Gotcha.
I also wanted to do something with original theme. Now, even though original themes, you know, do not sell as well as licensed themes, period, in stone, I still wanted to do something original so there was a chance of selling.
Sure.
You know, instead of like another fan, like, ooh, here's my Buffy pin, you know, like, it's fun to do that, but, you know, for me, the amount of time it takes, you really have to make something you can sell.
I think your game is very unique in the fact that I remember specifically all the conversations 3 years ago as Stern, you know, thank you Stern for keeping things alive, but as Stern has released, you know, comic book theme, rock band theme, movie theme over and over, a lot of sort of the internet forums you had people saying, man, I want an original theme, Medieval Madness, Fish Tales, look at all these great games with original themes. So you guys sort of came and said, here's your original theme.
Yes.
And it was sort of met at first with
Oh, we had a hard time selling them at first.
Yeah.
It was very tough. The first expo, I think we sold 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about original themes, is if you look at something like Medieval Madness, first of all, it's just an unlicensed Monty Python and the Holy Grail, if you think about it.
Sure, absolutely.
They're all, even those original themes that you think of, they're all based off like, you know, tropes and whatnot. Jack from Mars is just your cheesy science fiction. And, you know, this is just a trope. This is like, you know, reality TV. But if you think about it, in the late 90s, Williams was making mostly original themes, and their sales were also continually going downhill. And I don't know if that's a direct correlation, but there might be something to it. So at the time, as an original theme, it wasn't really worth as much. It's the 20 years or 18 years since then that it's grown in cachet. That's what's given it its value.
I agree.
Just like Big Bang Bar, like if you're like, hey Stern, let's make a movie about drunken aliens, it would never happen. But now you have like 16 years of you're like, oh, this is kind of a cool game. It's got unique art. So like just the time that people have appreciated it makes it almost like, I don't want to say it's still an original theme, but it has like that value to it. It has the value of time.
When we sat and talked at the bar at MGC in 2014, I had just decided to buy the game myself.
Yeah, I remember that.
22nd game, so I was.
And I was kind of like, thanks for buying it. I can eat tomorrow.
Roughly. And you said, and you had just announced also you're capping the run at 150,
which was purely a tactical move.
Which
actually
I told you at the time would work.
Everyone told us to do that, but Chuck is so stubborn. He is more stubborn than I am, so it's pretty tough. Well, I'm stubborn because I'm always right.
Well, clearly.
Yeah, but at the time, I think we were at around 60 units, and basically you have to make 100 of anything to make it worth our while. And we're like, okay, if 100 is the point where we keep the lights on, let's say, you know, 50% past that.
You told me that day, and I remember you said we're not going to sell 150 of these games. You were bitter on it. I
was, because it's tough.
It was hard. It was met with sort of like, oh, okay,
I mean, look,
spooky pinball.
You can take a cabinet, spray paint it black, and write the word Predator on it, and it'll sell out. But
I don't know if that would happen. I'm not sure that that's true.
I don't care anymore.
I don't know about that.
Well, you know, here's my thing. It's very difficult to sell an original theme. There's a reason reason, I mean, the Rob Zombie game, it's, we're not taking money for it. We're just writing on the list.
Yeah.
But I think it's just about done already.
Don't get ahead of me. Don't get ahead of me. No, I'm just kidding. What happened though? What changed from that point to, MGC then to now where it's, hey, they're sold out, people are on a list. You got people saying, hey, are these going to come up used? People want the game now. What happened?
Let me think. I would say two big things happened. We found the best advertisement, strangely enough, is selling games. The fact you're like, oh, these guys are boutique, and the way I pictured it's like Indiana Jones when that brick wall is coming down. No, it's not brick, it's stone. The stone wall is coming down. He slides under it and he grabs his whip and he gets by just in time. I think that was spooky with boutiques, and like other people since then, it's been a lot tougher. Like
well, we've seen the market take some hits.
Yeah. We got in just at the last minute, and still it was tough. So people lost confidence in the boutique market. But with Spooky, it's like they're shipping games. So you go to your friend's house, like, oh, my friend, he bought America's Most Haunted. It's in his house. I can play it. It's real. I like the game. Oh, I feel good about it. I'm going to order one. So shipping seemed to be our best advertisement. So the real turning point, it was insane. It was at the Texas Pinball Festival in March or late March.
Yeah, this year.
Yeah, you go there. You go to every show. You know what this was. And we had just that week, we had just gotten past the magical 100 mark.
Yeah.
And this was after the game had been officially for sale. At that point, it had been for sale probably about 14 months, right? And shipping for almost a year. We just got past 100, like, yay! Anyway, then in Texas, they went insane for it. We sold like 35 in like 2 days. And then, of course, then we were almost out. And then everyone online went into like a frenzy for it. And poof, it was gone.
I think that part of it too is that sometimes in this little hobby that we're all so in love with, we assume that Pinside is everything or the internet is everything, and that if it's in Pinside, everyone knows everything about it, and they've seen the videos, and you then put the game at a big show outside of MGC, outside of Wisconsin, outside of the Midwest. You take it to Texas where there's this second group of people, and they said, oh my gosh, this thing is not only legitimate, because I think I've heard that. People say, yeah, but is it really built well? And then they play it and they go, oh, not only is it built well, it's really fun and it's different, it's unique. I have to have this.
And it has very realistic ghost boob animation.
There are ghost boob animations. I want to go on record again how much I love the ghost breasts.
What? So you have to animate them in such a way that there's a latency anyway in human flesh with animation, but if it's a ghost, it's more it's kind of like misty. So it's actually a little slower. Because she gets hit, she's like,
So let's talk about the game. Obviously, we've covered the fact that it's a trope of a reality TV show kind of poking fun at ghost hunters that are out looking for ghosts. But in our game here, they actually find ghosts. There are ghosts, and you have to battle the ghosts.
Yes, that's why on the DMD animation, the humans look real. They look like digitization.
Yeah, they're photo digitized.
Right, whereas the ghosts are more animated because the ghosts are fake or they're not human.
Yes.
Someone was like, you need to have a scary ghost out there. You need really frightening ghosts, like from like a 1980s movie. It's like, how do you make a frightening ghost with 32 pixels? Answer, you don't. Unless you pan up it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had the ghost. That's why the ghost woman of the night is like laying on her side. That way you can like see her. It's so difficult to work with that aspect ratio.
Do the characters have names?
Yeah, they do it. They're on the back glass. If you look in the back glass in the other room, there's 6 tombstones. Each one of the tombstones corresponds to one of the ghost bosses. Like the.
So what is the ghost woman with the great ghost breasts? What's her name?
Molly Fitzpatrick. You got it. And then her tombstone says she was loved by many. It's on there. Go read it.
That's sweet. I like that.
And then the ghost voiced by Dennis Nordman is
the Doctor Ghost.
Yeah, the Doctor Ghost. I can't remember what we have his first name, but his last name is Nord. So we have some references in there.
Yeah.
And then we have a really rough tombstone, which is the Confederate Army general, because it, like shallow grave. It looks like. Actually, you know what I did for that tombstone? I went online and I got a still frame from Oregon Trail. The Apple II game. And I traced the shape of that tombstone. And then I took a tombstone texture and made the, like an 1860s tombstone.
Absolutely. The hero of the game, the lead character. Talk about him a little bit, because in a sort of strange coincidence, J-Pop convinces you to change the name because there's a video game of Ghost Squad. You change it to America's Most Haunted, and then later we find out there's a movie called America's Most Haunted.
Yes. So these independent filmmakers in Michigan created a movie called America's Most Haunted. And the premise of the movie is that they're a reality ghost hunting TV show. And they're...
I know, right?
Anyway, but they don't get very good footage, so they start faking it, you know, for ratings. But then they go to this one location that actually turns out to be haunted, and then they have to deal with the spirits. It's actually pretty well done for a low budget movie. You can rent it on Amazon for like $3. Anyway, I think one night they were up late Googling themselves.
Sure, as we do.
Yeah, who doesn't do that?
Clearly.
And anyway, so then they came across our game, and so they contacted us. They're like, "Oh, cool." They weren't mad or anything.
Did they think it was a game based off their movie?
No. How would we know about their movie? It wasn't even done yet.
Oh, okay.
Are we psychic? I sense another game. Anyway, you should ask me about the gypsy back glass.
Hey, Ben, I wanted to ask you about the gypsy back glass girl.
Yeah, so when we read it,
She's changed a lot.
Yeah, I was like, you know what? I want this to be realistic. I want the psychic to be like this dowdy gypsy woman. And then the guy drawing the art's like, okay, and he drew it. He's like, you sure about this? And I'm like, I don't know. And then someone up inside's like, are you sure about this? And that was the Richie quote. If two people tell you something sucks, it sucks. See, I listen to, I do listen to them. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm going to turn it into like this hot psychic babe. It's like, oh yeah. I was like, just draw someone that looks like Nicole Kidman back when she was hot. I don't give a crap anymore. Anyway, back to America's Most Haunted. So we actually started talking to them, and we actually hired one of the actors in it to do the voice, the lead character voice in our game. Because originally I had the lead character like, there's a ghost here, we must find it before the sun comes out, which is authentic to the theme.
To a bad TV show.
But it's not good for pinball.
Gotcha.
And that was a big thing that I've learned over the years. Like, just because like a gypsy woman, just because something makes sense for the theme doesn't make it good for pinball. And sometimes you have to have some woman in like a sparkly dress looking for ghosts. Doesn't make sense for the theme, but it makes sense for the pinball.
What are you most proud of on the playfield? When you look at that game, what do you kind of go, yeah,
Geometry-wise?
Yeah, just any of it. Design-wise, geometry-wise. What actually makes you the happiest that you pulled that off?
Not the paint job on that particular ghost.
That would be my particular ghost.
I really like the ghost loop that we did, the loop.
Yep.
Because when you hit it right, if you hit it right from either flipper, it will return to the other flipper.
Yes.
The geometry, it goes like, whoop.
Talking about the loop behind the 3-bank drop targets.
Yeah, and it was also, gosh, here we go again, John Papaduke. He's like, whatever you put there has to do a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah, and so I'm like, okay, there's a ghost there, and the ghost represents whatever.
The ghost bosses. Yep.
Originally, we wanted him or her to come out of the playfield, but that was just a bridge too far, so he just twists. And then we're like, okay, now there's a fast loop, there's a magnet to catch the ball, and there's a 3-bank target. So the 3-bank target, there's modes where it'll rise up and capture the ball until you like release it. So yeah, we just wanted there to be a lot of variety there, and then it's kind of generic. There's the 3 targets, but you can use them for a lot of different modes.
Definitely. One of the things that drew me to the game, and I think a lot of other people as they've gotten to play America's Most Haunted sort of fall in love with, is the rule set, is the code, is the work that you have not only done and continue to do with the updates you're still releasing. Talk about the philosophy there of, obviously you're building a boutique game, 150 units, most of them are going to people's houses. How does that affect you sitting down to write the rules for the game?
Well, when I'm at work and I should be working and I'm trolling Pinside, I see that people like rules. I mean, it's almost like the programmer is more important than the game designer now. It's really getting to that point, I think. At least an equal. And I keep seeing, I don't want it to get boring in the home. I want it to be deep. I want it to be, a lot of good rules. And I'm like, okay. And so that was kind of my thing, was like every mode with the ghosts, every mode does something different. So it's kind of unconventional. Like one problem we have is, the jump ramp, that can be difficult.
The jump ramp, very
I actually noticed
tough shot.
The next code update, if you make that jump ramp during any mode, it'll count toward the theater ghost.
Oh, okay.
Make it easier to light that.
Yeah.
Basically, actually, let me back up a little bit. I started the rules with what the ghosts were. No, actually, let me back up a little bit further. I started the rules with where the locations were. So I think about, okay, you've got these ghost hunting reality TV shows, and I watched quite a few of them for research on the Netflix. And I'm like, we need to find the 6 locations of the 6 modes. The 6 locations are the 6 modes, right? And so we picked all these very typical places that like allegedly ghosts are.
A prison.
Yeah.
An abandoned hospital.
Yep. Then once we had the location, they're like, okay, what ghost is there? And there were some differences, like the Civil War ghost. There's this ghost tale from like, actually it might be in Georgia or someplace, but like this little girl got hit by a stray bullet or something, and then now she haunts this building. And I'm like, no, a little girl ghost, we don't want that. Let's make him a, jerk.
Confederate
Yes,
jerk.
exactly. And then there's another, the bellboy ghost. We were gonna have a bellboy in a hotel, and he was gonna be like in love with this starlet that stayed there. Like, no, let's make him a mass murderer. It's more interesting.
It's more interesting.
Yeah, and actually that's Brian Kelly. I don't know if any of you guys know that guy. You probably
I know Brian Effin Kelly.
Brian Effin Kelly.
Yeah.
And so we basically, the locations drove who the ghosts were, and then that kind of drove the rules. Like with the bar ghost, she's like well, we never actually call her a whore in the game. We have like every other euphemism, like woman of the night, or evening star, or whatever they would
Loved
say.
by many.
Yes, soiled dove. She's called everything but that. But our conversation's like, yeah, KT, you okay to record the ghost whore dialogue? Anyway, but in her case, she's like, okay, she likes to, so she captures your friend, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna get a spiritually transmitted disease, and the ball is captured.
Yes. Yeah, you actually.
He's captured some more.
So if you don't know, you shoot in this mode, the bank of targets drops down, you shoot the ball and it catches your ball, which represents your little friend.
And then
You have to
ghost, she's
release
like
it.
spooning your friend, like, hey baby, I'm gonna charge you for this. And we did run into a mistake where we didn't actually start out with the intention of having family mode, and we have had some people complain about it. I don't think we do go too far. Next game we'll have a family mode. Definitely.
The Bible game?
No, Rob. That was pretty violent stuff. But yeah, basically, the locations drove the characters, and the characters drove the modes, and then the ghost hunting characters basically react to it. They're like, oh, and also we have we have the team leader, we have the ditzy woman, the psychic woman, and the tech guy.
Yeah.
So we basically slap them with whatever ghost would be the most diametrically opposed. So like the tech guy who's always like grumbling, he ends up with the ghost at the bar. The ditzy woman, interacts with the Confederate general. The psychic woman, who does she interact with? I forgot. Anyway, whatever would give us the best dialogue.
She's with the prison, right?
The prison? No, I think everyone gets trapped.
They call those
1, 2,
people.
3, 4.
It's brilliant. It's very brilliant the way you did it. I've had the game for a while now, and I've not seen it all. I still, every once in a while, look up and think, well, I haven't heard that call out before. How did you guys do all the voice work?
There's like 160 pages of script in the game, and we wrote it all out ahead of time, and we basically, I can't remember how many voices there. There's probably at least 15 different voices in it. And yeah, we would just, whenever the person was around, we would record them in my shop using something kind of like this. Not very professional. And then we just edited it all together. So I think in total, including sound effects, there's over 1,100 speech calls and sound effects. Wow. Basically, every event, like let's say a mode has 3 events in it, or 3 like like 3 stages of progress. Each one of those will have at least 3 different.
So you're talking 9 for that little part of,
That's why you don't get the same lines. I mean, they did it in the old days too.
Sure. What about the music of the game? Where did the music come from?
I actually wrote it.
That was you, all of it.
Yeah.
The main multi-ball song in the game is Ghost Squad. Kind of a throwback to the original.
I didn't write that.
You didn't write that?
Yeah, that was actually that was left over from an episode of our show. Because back in 2000, actually, where the idea for America's Most Haunted came from, our Ghost Squad, was we did an episode of the Ben Heck Show, the Halloween episode in 2011. We made a parody of ghost hunting TV shows, and they didn't like it because it had nothing to do with electronics. But we're like, you know what? This would be a good theme for a pinball machine, and that episode was called Ghost Squad. And that's actually where this idea came from. And then anyway, at the end of that episode, we had this my assistant's brother did like the go squad.
Yeah.
And it was so annoying, so I deliberately left it in, even though it makes no sense. We might replace it someday.
No, don't do that. Artwork. Talk about the artwork. Who did the backlash? Who did the? I obviously know the answer to this, but who did the playfield?
The backlash was done by, first backlash I did in Photoshop, and everyone hated it. I thought they would hate. This is interesting. I thought they would hate the fact that it was all green. but they hated the fact that it used photos of people who weren't famous. It's perfectly all right to slap, like, who's that guy? Chris Pine or Uhura?
Star Trek.
Yeah, that people are okay with that. They complain about it, but they still buy it. But if it's photos of people who aren't actors, like a Gottlieb from the 80s, people hate that. And we learned that the hard way. And that was one thing that Chuck was definitely wrong about. I was like, hey, let's show our art in July. He's like, no, let's wait for Expo. And so then Expo, we had to make this mad rush to change it in like 2 weeks. And I wish we would have been wrong sooner. And so anyway, then we had people were like, oh, that back glass is much better. It's like, well, it's the same composition of the one you hated. It's just hand drawn. And so yeah, I had a local artist in Madison named Kevin Hill. He redid the back glass. And then the playfield I also did the cabinet art because it's pretty simple. Oh, there's Chuck. Yeah. Oh, our trophy. Sweet.
So you design the game physically. You design most of the artwork and then do the artwork. The sound, you were the director of.
Yep.
Have there been many other pinball machines that have, beyond the one prototype we might see?
Oh, you forgot the part where I created the board set.
The board set, and that's actually probably one of the
I don't know what I was thinking.
I'm impressed. It blows me away because when I think back to all the history of pinball, has there ever been a game produced on this scale that was so much kind of born out of one person doing all of it?
You'd have to ask someone familiar with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty impressive.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
And the Pinball Circus guys are using our board. And the reason we don't really sell it yet is, the honest reason is because I'm too lazy to document everything. We'll sell it eventually. But we are using it on the next game, so yay.
So you want to talk about the next game? Because we just pitched you a game you can't buy, so. America's Most Haunted, it's awesome, you can't have one. You haven't already bought one.
Oh, I'm sure.
But you'll get to play them in shows for years to come.
So wait, let me ask you a question.
Oh, okay, sure.
So you have one of our games.
I do.
What is your favorite aspect of it? What do you like?
I like that there's lots of ways to play the game, and there's actually lots of ways to score in playing the game. It is so difficult. It's a hard game. Hardest game I've ever had a lot of time on by a long ways. What I like about the game is I can focus on just a couple different modes, and that will entertain me for a long time because it is difficult. And you find yourself sidetracking because you will accidentally maybe lock a ball or two, or you might accidentally get into photo hunt. You're like, okay, now I got to dial it in and that can be the whole game for you right there, is trying to complete photo hunt. So that is for me in the home environment where I can literally just play the game over and over and over again. Even a game that I love. I love Twilight Zone. I love the theme. I love the art. It's like my favorite pinball machine of all time. I have America's Most Haunted sitting next to it, and I play America's Most Haunted much more.
Oh,
because I just can go back to these sort of difficult schemes. We haven't even talked about the fact that there's sort of this side route of the game, which is the minions. You have that 3-bank drop target that you drop, and then you're shooting just that loop and trying to beat the ghosts.
That was actually added in, I don't want to say fairly late, but it was after all the main modes.
Yeah.
And I called it the dum-dum mode. It's basically, if you keep shooting this, something will happen.
Yep.
Every game has it.
Sure.
And we're like, okay, they're ghost minions. And then, we definitely started building upon it. Like, oh, now you catch them in the loop. And then, my favorite is the minion multi-ball. If you stack it with the elevator multi-ball, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. There's smart rules in the game too. It's stuff that I see happen and I'm like, oh, I'm glad somebody thought to do that. Like catching the ball, or a couple of the modes give you a second chance. Love that. If you lose the Doctor Ghost mode, your ball is caught there and you're trying to release the ball.
That confuses a lot of people, but I'm glad you're...
I don't think it'll confuse people once they get it in the home and really...
Yeah, because each mode, if you start a mode, you get one quick restart per player per game.
And in a couple of the modes, that restart is with the ball that was being held for the mode.
Yes, basically any mode that's holding the ball gives you the ball back, and if you get with the Dr. Ghost, it'll give you the ball back, like, here's your ball back, you wiener. That's Dennis Groveman saying wiener. He just wanted to say wiener. He did. He's like, I want to say wiener. Anyway, so then if you get the ball back on the door in 5 seconds, it restarts the mode. Or in the ghost bar ghost, she's like, you get your balls back here in 5 seconds, honey.
So you got to reshoot the
loop.
Yep.
And if you don't, then you just go back into no mode and you have to re-advance it. Other modes that don't have the quick restart, if you fail the mode,
it stays lit.
Yeah, when you get your ball back, it'll be lit. You can shoot it and restart it again. Because I know it is a hard game, and there's still tweaks I want to make to it. But I think it comes from like the video game, because I like video games. There's a lot of video game mentality in it. And I think that kind of opens up a fresh avenue.
Talk about the video mode real quick. It was born on Pinside in the matter of a few hours.
I hate video modes.
And then you did one.
Yes, I think it was Oric who came up with the idea, wasn't it?
Could have been.
Flippy Ghost?
We tried to call him a second ago.
You tried to call him.
I did call him.
That was when that Flappy Bird thing was really popular for like 3 seconds on YouTube. And Oric was like, so there was no video mode in the game, and I was dead set against them because I detest video modes. And people were like, you should put one in. I'm like, fine, if you guys can think of a mode, I'll put it in. And Oric came up with Flippy Ghost. And I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of like that. It's like play on flippers and Flappy and whatever. No one will know what the reference means in 3 minutes. But I liked it because the screen scrolls horizontally, so it uses the aspect ratio of the video display in good fashion. And it's really tough if you're just using 2 buttons. Like you can move left and right, but you can't shoot. Or you could like shoot toast at the dog, but you can't change it. Yeah. So I'm like, I think it should just be hitting the buttons causes you to float, and if you stop hitting them, you fall down, and the screen's always scrolling. Yeah. And then I had that zombie chasing you. That's just because apparently zombies have to be in everything, so I put a zombie in it. I actually programmed that whole thing in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's cool. It's neat. It's really a game where all the little stuff's thought of.
And the last code update, there's an option to disable video mode, so you don't have to play it ever.
Has it been tough being so out there? And I guess I mean by out there, the whole development of this, after it was announced, you were sort of right there on Pinside saying, hey, tell me what you think, and getting hit with the criticism of maybe some of the artwork. He's taking a phone call in the middle of our seminar.
What, are you kidding me?
No.
I'm sorry, I was looking at a text someone said.
That's all right.
It's not from horror.
That's all right. I'll repeat the question. Has the criticism that you've just been sort of out there to take, I mean, you guys have been really just, hey, we're Spooky Pinball, here's our game, what do you guys think? And everyone has their own opinion. What's that like sometimes when the real critical stuff comes in?
Well, probably the worst was when we were at Expo 2013 and everyone hated our art. They didn't complain about the game, they just hated our art. The only person who didn't hate it, I remember, was Roger Sharp, but we still changed it. And I remember Chris from Cointrader kept coming up and was like, you gotta change that art, man. You gotta change that art. And again, if more than one person tells you something that sucks, then it sucks. Yeah. As far as that's concerned, that was probably the thing that I didn't really take it personally. It was more like, oh great, how much time is it going to take to redo this? So that was probably the toughest part. As far as other things people complain about, I don't care. I don't see them building promotion.
Sure, absolutely. Second game, we have an announcement on the second game. It was announced last week. Rob Zombie's Spook Show International.
Yes.
I know that's Rob Zombie's a big thing to Charlie. Something this is like definitely a dream theme for him. What's your involvement with the second game going to be like?
Well, so it is a retheme of his existing Zombies game.
Yep. And
I did make him change things on it. I'm like, Chuck, you should change and blah, 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 blah. So I went over to shop, and I was like, give me that white. I was like, that's the sound of ripping metal.
Ripping metal off of a board.
That's probably what it is. So I don't think you probably don't want me to talk about it too much, but we made some better inner loops. We replaced the physical ball lock with a soft ball lock because it's actually a lot better for code to do that, and then we changed the geometry of the upper playfield, blah, blah, blah. So I definitely help with that. As far as code is concerned, we do have a new guy working on that. He's writing it based off a new improved code base that I created. So basically the code in America's Most Wanted as a game, great, I like the code, you like the code. Underneath, it's a mess.
Because it's all you just sort of
over like 2 years, it's terrible. So we cleaned that all up and made a new framework for games going forward. We actually made basically a Pinhack library in C. And also, I'll probably be working on the polish and audio video stuff in the fall before Expo. I would assume that it will be at Expo.
So you'll sort of be in a consultant or supervisory sort of role on the technical side.
The thing is, America's Most Haunted was very difficult to build, and it took a lot of time. So I was like, Chuck, I just can't do this for a while. I mean, it sounds awful, but it was like the little butterfly. Like, here you go, work on your game. I'm here. I can help a little bit, but I mean, I would have loved to code it. I mean, I think it's going to be a smash hit game, but I just literally...
Seems like it already is. Seems like the reaction was ridiculous.
How insane I am right now. Picture if I became more insane. And that's what would happen if I'm going to program that game.
Do you want to do another pinball machine from the ground up at some point?
Yeah, at some point I will.
I mean, we joke about Bible Adventures, we joke about other
It's
things.
not a joke. I want to do it just to see what people say.
I think it could work.
I don't care, I can do whatever I want, I can do it.
All right.
Either that, or I'd love to do Futurama.
Futurama, that'd be cool.
And we did look into Army of Darkness, but
Yeah.
Army of Darkness would be a grand slam, home run, 3-point, what else? Hole in one, every other sports euphemism. But it kind of got too hot with the new show coming out.
Yeah.
Does
that mean they want a lot of money?
A double barrel ball launcher, right?
Oh,
and then the thing would be like a shotgun handle, and it could load in 2 balls for multi-ball, and then like they come out.
That's pretty good.
And there'd be a lower playfield, just be the pit, like to the pit with him.
I like it.
And there's got to be a skeleton, right? Somewhere out there. Oh, I did have some input. I mean, I had input also. The guy from the House of 1,000 Corpses, like the fried chicken man,
Captain Spaulding. Yeah.
I was like, okay, if we have a Spaulding toy, he's got to have a cleaver and a bag of greasy chicken. He's got to have it in his hand, and there has to be a dark greasy splotch on it, so you know the chicken's in there.
So is that confirmed?
It's going to be in the game. I have to with it.
Very
And
cool.
also, we have Alex Morley doing the art,
Yep.
and I did say I want a woman in a battle-damaged metal gold bikini, holding a flaming sword, riding a giant hell rat.
That's not much to ask.
As long as that's in there, I'll be happy.
So a few people out there just looking at the ceiling. Sorry. So, what did you bring with you over here? Let's talk about this thing.
Oh, yeah.
This is pinball related. We can talk about this.
Yeah, so after the show, I'm headed down to Austin, or headed over to Austin. Yes, it's west of here, for a free-scale semiconductor event. And
A what?
Free-scale semiconductor.
Okay.
Semiconductor.
Great.
And they wanted us to make something using one of the products, so we used ball trap. We used a teensy to build a miniature pinball machine. And since it's in Texas, I chose the theme of space shuttles. It's a great theme for pinball.
Sure. So you can actually see him build this on the Ben Heck show. I think it was a 2-episode series.
Yeah, we did it pretty quickly, actually, strangely enough.
Is there a market for something like this?
You tell me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Would that be cool?
Yeah. Yes.
Take my money. I'd buy that for $1.
I think it had to be a little bit more than $1. Maybe $3.
$3.
$2.50.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. Zizzles were bigger than this.
Zizzles were bigger than that. Yeah. What do you think of the boutique pinball game today, 2015? We've seen the market. We've seen the rise and fall of Skippy. We've seen the apparent kind of implosion of Zidware. What are your thoughts? You're kind of in the middle.
Do you want my honest thoughts?
That's why we're here.
Are you
That's
sure?
why they paid all the good money to be in here.
Yep.
Well, my absolute super honest thought, which I've obviously been giving all night, is that when you're giving people money to develop a game instead of build it, you're asking for trouble. We develop everything out of our own pocket. All the licensing for Rob Zombie was done out of the profits from America's Most Haunted. America's Most Haunted was developed in my spare time, and Chuck in his spare time, and also once he started his business, and didn't make much money at first. No new business does. If you're making money as a new business, you're doing it wrong. As bad as that sounds. So yeah, I mean, we have to catch up at a certain point. If I think of like, okay, well, if I get all my money on the back end for America's Most Haunted, and then if I make another game, it's like I never get ahead. So I basically, if I keep doing it, I basically have to take the bullet of one game.
You mean this is business, this pinball thing?
It is. I think when you have a bunch of money sitting in the bank, you have no incentive to work very hard. And when that money only comes, like, yeah, I get a good chunk on America's Most Haunted, I'll be honest with you, but it's only when the game goes out the door. And when that's your catalyst, you work a lot harder. And that's, that sounds rough, but it's the truth.
Is there anything else you'd like to address here tonight, Mr. Ben?
You asked.
I know. I wanted that. That's good stuff. Is there anything else we'd like to go over here? The floor is yours.
We have 10 minutes. Are there any questions?
There
Yes,
you go.
sir.
There's
Oh, yeah, we have a mic right here. He knows. He's like all over it.
I probably got myself in plenty of trouble already.
Hey, I'm a longtime follower. I used to, like 10 years ago, I used to be on your forum. I'm not going to tell you my username, that'd be too embarrassing. I was like 13. But
Actually, the creator of the Oculus Rift used to be on our forum, so it's not that embarrassing. Yeah, Palmer Lucky.
But yeah, I was wondering, after you've made this game and stuff, do you eventually just get so tired of it? Like you just start playing and you're like, oh,
I actually became really tired of it about 1 year before it was finished. I don't want one. Chuck's like, hey, you want us to build you one? I'm like, no, I never want to see it again. Are you referencing America's Most Wanted? Yeah, maybe after a year or so I might want to play it, but yeah, I get that sick of it. And if you talk to a lot of designers, maybe not programmers so much, but most designers, they never want to see it again.
Yeah, I know, like if you make something, you just see everything that's wrong with it. You don't see anything that's good about it.
Yeah, you can't step back and see the forest for the trees and appreciate it for what it is, unless you wait about 10 years and you're like, oh, I did that back then. Yeah, so.
Very good question. Yes, sir?
Actually, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Good, because I'm lazy. I just had a quick question. You talk about this pinball construction stuff. I think it's really interesting. Do you have any experience playing like Bill Budge's pinball construction set from like EA a bazillion years ago?
Oh!
Atari Pinball. I didn't know if any of that inspired you in any way.
I don't think I had that program, but I certainly remember reading about it in like what would have been Analog Computing or Byte or Antic, because I was an 8-bit computer guy back in the day. Yeah, but I was pinball construction set, right? From EA. Yeah, I remember it, but I never had it.
Okay, that program was a filthy lie. It's not that easy to build. It's like you're just like blip, blip, blip. You know, it's really. I didn't know. The reason I asked is I was just wondering, like, how much simulation are you able to do? Because I look at something like this as a developer myself, it's very difficult for me to, understand, the physics and like what's interesting and how it's going to play.
There are people who design games in virtual pinball and try that. We actually make an Italian bottom on a piece of, we basically make a wooden play field and we put an Italian bottom on it, which is your standard flippers and whatever. And then we literally, this is what I do, I take foam core, I stick it down, I hot glue it, I shoot it, I move it. I stick it down, I hot glue it, I shoot it, and we dial it in that way, and then we map that into a geometry with actual points. So at least I do it by hand. And if you ask a lot of the old-time designers about it, they're all into foam core, so much that I believe Steve Ritchie called it Nordmanite, because Dennis Nordman was the foam core pioneer.
There is an example though, Wrath of Olympus, that was designed in virtual pinball.
Yes, it was.
And then he built that. And he will tell you that thing flipped great. He was shocked how little he had to change from his original virtual pinball design.
I think one issue that you might have with that is you might put a little bit too much in because it's virtual, and then it was more costly in reality. But
Have you talked about making a virtual version of America's Most Wanted?
Great question.
Someone online actually made a future pinball version of Bill Paxton pinball. I just gave him all the files on like a hard drive, and he did a really good job of it. I don't think he ever actually played the real thing. As far as doing a virtual version, if anyone would be interested, I would definitely hook them up with the files. I really wouldn't want to take the time to really give them much hands-on stuff. They'll be like, here's how you learn how to swim. Woo, have fun.
Who are your pinball arcade customers? Farsight pinball arcade customers?
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking they should tackle
We've
that.
actually talked to them and Zen, but nothing's really happened yet. So, I don't know. I use computers all the time. I mean, like I'm a total 80s computer kid, but I still think doing it in reality, you never know. Like even when I do designs of 3D prints, you never know until you have it in your hand. Like, okay, now I know.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Little
This man
less
is not
lazy,
lazy.
don't have
Less
quite
understand.
a different voice. Ben,
Thanks for the beer, by the way.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Tell me about your time management skills. I mean, are you type A? How do you get so much done?
Are you trolling, Ben?
No. I've seen you show on Element 14. I've seen basically.
Well, I'm not married. That helps.
Okay. I was going to type A, don't sleep, or not married. I'm not sure.
No, I do sleep. I actually sleep every night.
Now I'm completely lost. I have no idea how you do it. But I mean, you just can't seem to get so much done watching
Yeah,
shows.
well, I mean, it might seem that way, but America's Most Wanted, we spent oh gosh, like 2 years on it before it actually started shipping, and then I'm still tweaking the code. It's never done. So even if I make it look easy, that doesn't mean it is easy. At least for me, it's pretty difficult. I would say the big thing, if you're getting into a project and you want to start something, the big thing to do is it's really easy to start a project. It's really tough to finish one. So it's just the drive to get past the finish line. And with the America's Most Haunted, you know, Chuck's like, oh, by the way, I started a new business and we're gonna make your game. And you know, my whole family's future's riding on you. Have fun. Like, it's like, well, I guess I better get it done. But you know what? That's a good carrot to chase. You know, I mean, again, other people could use that kind of inspiration. That was my political answer or comment as far as other routines. I don't know. It's just all it takes. I saw this Nike t-shirt back in the '90s once. When there's like the Nike No Fear, and it was like all it takes is all you've got. And that applies to this kind of stuff. It's a lot of work.
I believe it. Other questions we can get answered for you guys? Ben's going to sign autographs and kind of do a little meet and greet afterwards for the next few minutes. We're going to go out into the lobby and do that. So play America's Most Haunted when you get a chance to see it. It's a fantastic game. Come say hi to Ben.
And buy Rob Zombie.
And buy Rob Zombies. Switch International. Let's give Ben a round of applause.